Welcome, everybody, to The Lawyer Show. I am your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. Today, my co-counsel is Bradley Anderson. For those of you who have not seen The Lawyer Show, let me explain a little bit about what The Lawyer Show is and who we are and why it is that we're doing what we're doing. I like to think of The Lawyer Show as the Sesame Street of lawyer talk things. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. That's all I do. So naturally, I'm the good guy in pretty much every case that I handle. I'm the hero, unless I'm not. Now, what happens, though, is I find my practice boring. That's just me. I mean, there's only so many cases that you can have that involve drugs, that involve guns, that involve sex. There's only so many cases that you can handle of that nature, right? And then it just gets boring. And so I'm in The Lawyer Show. I'm thinking, let's get some tax issues. Let's get some tax issues here. Let's talk about corporate mergers and bankruptcies, right? Let's talk about fair wage claims. Labor collective bargaining,
fun
and that
stuff.
Yeah, right.
Fun
The
stuff.
things that make life worth living. And so anyway, but I say that it's like the Sesame Street of podcasts for the reason that it's like when you watch Sesame Street, it's like, here's the letter G, and here's all the things that letter G can do, right?
Sure.
The letter G can go here, it can go here, we can make this word out of it, right? And so my goal is to bring in people who have more exciting things to say than just about drugs and guns and sex and crime, right? And so look at all the things that lawyers can do. And we've had lawyers from all sorts of different disciplines and areas that make it exciting. And today is no exception with my co-counsel, Bradley Anderson, who I've known for a while now.
About 20 years or so. No, it's been almost that long. Well, when did you start practicing law?
I started practicing law in, 2001.
Okay, so that's when I believe we first met, when you were a young prosecutor in Collin County.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. Yes, 15, 20, maybe 30 pounds ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably 40 for me, 41.
No.
But
okay. Well, Bradley is like the letter G in lawyer parlance, because he's got a very different and it's not even, you can say practice, but he does a lot of different things being a lawyer. And so anyway,
well, I also found my law practice boring, and that's why I started trying to pursue other things.
That's why you do what you do. But we got to tease the audience here a little bit. We're not gonna just jump right in.
Okay.
And start talking about you.
Okay.
I mean, I told you this would be about you today.
I'd rather talk about you.
Well, as would I. But I'm not that. I'm not. Again. This is all because I can't try cases during a pandemic, and we'll see what happens when the courts. But the pandemic is over. You're aware.
Well, when I arrived in Collin County, I was made aware of that fact, that we are post-COVID now. Mm-hmm. So that's fantastic news that we have crossed that finish line.
Well, I mean, look, if everybody else had our level of personal responsibility, they can do what they want to, right? Now, okay. Your practice is, so you do municipal court traffic tickets by day, and by night you are a Dallas Glitterati famed restaurateur.
Correct.
You have 4 restaurants, is it now?
It's 4, yes.
4 restaurants, okay.
And right before COVID hit, we were debating number 5, but I'm so happy we didn't pull that trigger.
I'm amazed. Well, congratulations on still having 4.
We still have them, and so I think we're well positioned, and looking forward to a good rest of 2021. I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, it's not a train, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel. So I think our restaurants are going to make it. It's been a bumpy, rocky road, for sure.
Well, let's go into. Let's start and talk about let's talk about being a lawyer.
Okay.
Okay. Because this isn't the restaurant show. This is a lawyer show.
This
but
is
we're
a
gonna,
lawyer show.
We're going to talk about restaurants
Okay.
and food and dishes and grease traps and regulations
Oh, yeah.
and ways that I want to get into towards the end of the show or maybe later. I want to get into how you use your lawyer powers against normal people.
Against code compliance or customers?
Anybody who is powerless, anybody who when you they're like, oh crap, he's a lawyer. Did you know he's a lawyer?
It gives people the perception that you know what you're talking about, even if that's not true.
Now that's one secret we weren't supposed to talk
Okay.
about on the lawyer show.
Okay.
It's okay. No, I should have told you beforehand that many of our watchers, our viewers, are not in fact attorneys, and so there's a special aura, right? That we have. There's a class in med school, I'm pretty sure, called Hide from the Lawyers.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you've probably.
I think they do a pretty good job of that too.
Oh my God! Every time you call a doctor's office, they. This is now we're way up, but that's fine. I mean. Yeah, every time you call a doctor's office, just needing records or needing something, I mean, next thing you know, I feel horrible about it. I've called doctor's office just to get a record. My client comes in, says, I love my doctor. They're wonderful. They're great. And here's a record of my whatever, fill in the blank issue that I have that's relevant to my case. I call the doctor's office. Next thing I know, I'm getting a call from their lawyer because this doctor's paid their deductible. And they're thinking they're getting sued for malpractice, and the lawyer's like, well, why are you calling? And I'm like, well, why don't you tell me? What is it that you're afraid of? Because maybe we will now.
Yeah.
Anyway, restaurants.
Yes.
Right?
Restaurants.
But before then, I want to talk about lawyer things with you.
Let's do it.
You come from a family of lawyers.
I do.
Okay. Tell JP, Kathy, and the Crew Nation about that.
Well, my dad is a lawyer, still practices, although he is pretty much retired. But he does federal arbitrations now. He's a federal arbitrator, so he practiced law. My brother's a lawyer. My brother's wife's a lawyer, and I think that's all the lawyers that we have right now in the family that are actually practicing.
Well, you're raising 3.
I hope not. So,
no?
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
No.
We've got time. They're young. They've got plenty of time to make bad decisions. So
that's great. So okay, I've got some good story, and going back with you, I've got some good Anderson family stories here. Not Anderson. I've got stories that I have. So your dad.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Is any chance he's watching?
I don't think so, but we'll make sure he views this afterwards.
Okay.
So you have to be kind, right?
He's so he's so great. Quick war story here about that. And I think you may remember this. So right when I left the DA's office in Collin County, your dad was dabbling in court-appointed work.
He was. And so he prior to that, he was the assistant regional counsel for the IRS.
Yeah.
Doing nothing but employment law issues. Basically, when there were lawsuits within the federal government regarding employment law issues, he would represent or defend the IRS. Mm-hmm. And so you're right. After he retired, he decided he wanted to get on the court appointment list in Collin County and dabble in some criminal defense.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And okay. So your dad is, if nothing else, thorough.
Very.
Okay, and he is very detail oriented, and I imagine that comes from. I mean, when you're practicing in his area and you're working for the IRS as a lawyer, you're going to be pretty detail oriented, and that's sort of not. You don't find a whole lot of court appointed lawyers that do that.
So you're saying most court-appointed lawyers, they're shooting from the hip instead of aiming, or?
Look, any lawyer, okay, and any lawyer can be prepared.
Sure.
Any lawyer can be ready. Any lawyer can work hard. It takes a really special one to just show up and pull it out of their, you know what, and show up and just dazzle everybody. That's when the magic really happens. Not a lot of lawyers have a background from the IRS, and so he asked me about a month after I left the DA's office. I was doing nothing.
You were sitting second chair. Was it in a DWI case?
No. Well, no. Okay, so he asked me to help him. He had a case, and our client went by the name of Smokey.
And I think y'all went to Smokey's residence for an interview. Or
Okay.
I do recall something about this.
Yes. So Smokey, God, it was an assault. And there was and there's actually a couple stories I can tell out of this. But so Smokey was on trial for assault, and it was a big group fight. And he was accused of punching a female. He was accused of punching a girl in the midst of this whole big brawl. And in part of this, there was an allegation. There was an adult lady who was kind of alleged to be a facilitator. I think the story was that she grabbed this group of kids from a small town and drove them out. I think it was to Salina, which at the time, very small town as well. And so your dad was like, said, let's go interview them. I said, sure. And your dad and I show up at this house in East McKinney.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it July, June. It was hot. Yep. And I'm in a black suit, and I've got the sweat dripping down my forehead. And your dad has his list of 74 questions that he's going to ask this lady. She answers the door, and she's like, who are you, and what's this about? And she's kind of darting, looking around, And your dad is asking questions, just going right down his list. Now, what's the blah, 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 blah? And where did you take a so-and-so and blah, 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 blah? And what time would that have been? And she's answering the questions. Meanwhile, I'm looking around, and I see some kind of shady characters
in the background,
sort of walking out of the doors on the side of the house, walking, just kind of
like exiting the property,
leaving the property, just kind of walking around. And eventually I kind of nudge your dad. I kind of said, let me talk for a minute. And I pull him back. And this is going to be a lawyer show first right now. Oh. I'm going to say something that I've never said on the lawyer show. I pull him back. And I said to your dad, I'm like, we need to get the fuck out of here. This is a drug house. They think we're cops because they're all splitting. They're all getting over. He's like, really? Do you think so? Why is that? And I'm like, do you see all these people who are kind of getting out of? They think we're cops. They think we're about to bust this place. Oh, do you think so? And I'm like, yeah, no, I think so. I think we need to leave. So
did he take your advice?
Oh, we jammed. Yeah, we were our this misdemeanor court-appointed case. We at least on this angle, he's like, I have 7 more questions to ask, and I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, we can get that later.
Ask him later.
We can get that later. I mean, these people may think we're armed, and I'm not. I don't know about you.
Was this Smokey's residence?
I don't think it was Smokey's residence. I think it was a lady who was kind of a big facilitator in all this. But yeah.
So was Smokey acquitted?
Smokey was acquitted. We
See?
won.
There
we
you go.
Won.
Thank God for those 74 questions that were prepped.
He was detailed, and I'll tell you another quick story about in about 3 or 4 weeks after the trial. I'm in my car at a car wash that's at like 380 and Central in McKinney.
I think you've told me this.
It's
been a long time though. I want to.
So I'm in my car and I look out and and to back up at the trial, I mean, it was the first case I defended that I was a defense lawyer in a trial, and the complaining witness in the case, I probably gave her a pretty tough cross-examination. And so as a prosecutor, you don't cross-examine a whole lot of folks. You do a lot of direct exam. What happened next? What happened next? What happened next? And as a defense lawyer, you get to cross certainly more people. I'm getting my car washed, and I'm looking in the line, and I see this young lady, maybe 19 or so. I'm, 28. I'm 30.
Yeah.
And I see her, and I'm like, God, I know her. I'm like, how do I know her? I didn't grow up in McKinney. I don't have friends that age here, really anywhere. I'm married. And then it dawned on me. I was like, oh,
that was the complaining witness.
That's her. And we're going to get our car keyed. So we ducked down in our Volvo.
Did you go? But you
and we put it in reverse.
Oh, you reversed. You did not get the car wash.
No.
Did you go to another car wash?
I don't remember. But yeah, that was a very magical time, all facilitated by your dad. Now your brother, I learned a very good lesson with him, and that's never to try to set people up on dates.
Did you try to set Brooks up on a date?
I tried to set him up on a date, and I don't know what happened because Brooks hasn't talked to me since 2007.
I was set up on a date.
Yeah?
She ended up being my wife.
It can work.
See, it works.
It can work. Not by me, because I never did that successfully with anybody.
No.
Yeah.
Who was the young lady?
I don't remember. She didn't talk to me either. I don't remember. But
did Brooks ever tell you anything about the date, or you just never heard any?
I didn't really press it. Actually, I think I know who it was. She's happily married today to some other human, not him. So yeah, that's her loss.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, Brooks may not even remember it.
Was that back when Brooks was practicing law in Collin County also?
Must have been. So and I hadn't seen him. So let's. This is a good okay. Transition point. And before I get there, you're watching JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network. You can watch JP, Kathy, and the Crew Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 7:30 and 9. This is the Lawyer Show. We are on between noon and 1 on Thursdays. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel today is Bradley Anderson. So this is a good segue point here that we can start talking about your practice. So first we talked about your family a little bit. And so you come from a background of lawyers. Your dad's a lawyer. I'm curious how lawyer children do, because I've got a child and, like that. But also talk about the direction your practice took when you started practicing and how you got practice-wise where you are.
Well, I believe I was licensed, I think it was 2001 also, right? And so my first law office was actually here in Collin County at 101 West Louisiana Street, and I think it was Suite 203 in downtown McKinney, Texas. And I chose that office location because it was next door to Derek Walpole's law office.
Are you still getting mail there, or are you still dodging?
I'm still, yes.
The bills.
Yes. So Derek, back in those days, I knew Derek. Brooks actually met Derek first, and for some reason I think they met in Houston. I don't know if Derek went to law school in Houston, but somehow Brooks and Derek Walpole met in Houston. And so when I got out and started practicing law, Derek was a guy that I went to for advice and to follow around and try to learn the practice. And so back then I was doing criminal defense and family law. So that was, and then the occasional traffic ticket. That was my practice for a number of years.
Mm-hmm. I saw Derek about 2 days ago.
He's looking good. He's lost a bunch of weight.
Yes.
He's looking youthful.
He's always been in shape.
He's always been in shape.
And I went to see his band once. Is he still doing that? Do you know? I don't talk.
I don't
too
know.
much.
I don't know. I mean, I know that with COVID life, a lot of bands were not, aren't out and about performing, but or having shows. It's been a while since last time I saw him was in Collin County JP4, and that was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago.
So when and something I think our viewers should know is that what happens is in the practice of law, or what used to happen, is that we have to be in a bunch of different courts, particularly in criminal law, And so we, on occasion, if I'm ever in a municipal court, I'll show up, and then there's his smiling face right there 20 minutes before I get there.
You always gave me reason to smile. Just seeing you made me
and
happy.
you're always, and I'm showing up for one thing, and you've got a whole stack, and you're like, dude, why do you even do this? You know, I mean, I might be taking care of a client who's got a connected whatever, and it's a one-off deal, and so you've always been like, why don't you call me or text me? I'll do this for you.
Yeah.
But I always feel badly doing that.
Well, you shouldn't, because if I'm there, there's no reason for you to be there.
Indeed, very true. But the advocacy, you know, I go to the court and I cry to the prosecutor, and I do my thing. Although, kind of getting into municipal stuff and getting into tickets. How did you get into tickets?
Well,
because not a lot of lawyers are going to go to law school and say,
no, absolutely.
Give me these tickets.
Yeah, so it certainly wasn't. It wasn't the reason I went to law school.
And by the way, don't call me for your ticket ever. Call him.
I always.
What's your number?
214-370-8260.
One more time.
214-370-8260.
Yeah.
So traffic ticket representation is my passion, and you should never deny passion. No. On a serious note, being a young lawyer, other lawyers don't have time. They were not as responsible as you in showing up to municipal court with one or two cases, and so they would oftentimes pass along their tickets to a lawyer that needed cases or needed to build their practice. And after I got to the point where I was having several lawyers giving me their traffic tickets, and I just saw a business plan with that. And so after being in Collin County for a couple of years, I was living in Dallas at the time, and so Brooks and we opened up our law office at 6060 North Central Expressway. We're no longer there. We've had a few offices since then, but kept getting traffic tickets, and it got to the point where I was getting enough tickets to where I was started soliciting other lawyers to send me their tickets, and also starting to advertise for traffic ticket representation. And that also, around that time, Brooks and I were in the process of opening up another business that wasn't law-related, and doing the traffic I was able to – it became more difficult to have cases that were taking a lot of thought, a lot of time, a lot of energy and stress. And so with traffic tickets, most traffic tickets, not all, they kind of – you could put them on the assembly line. And so I was able to manage that part of our law practice while pursuing other things. And so it kind of just grew, and it just kind of took over and became.
So you knew Conrad Summers?
I did. Yes.
So
yeah. He was back when I would see him back in the day, back in those municipal courts.
Okay.
Doing the municipal court tour.
So Conrad Summers, going back to the year of when I left the DA's office, 2005. Same year. Same summer as the Smokey. As the great Smokey caper debacle, acquittal.
Yes.
The same summer, Conrad Summers, who was a traffic ticket lawyer, now deceased, he sent me my very first civil case, and it was a pretty darn good one. When I left the DA's office, I was still doing civil work, and he actually sent me kind of a high-paying client with a real legal problem. And Conrad, and I found out later that Conrad kept a master list of things to refer to other lawyers. All he did was traffic tickets, but the cases that would come into him were unbelievable.
Yes.
And he just didn't want any of them.
Correct.
18-wheel trucking accident worth $7 million. Whatever. I'm going to go to court and defend this bad right-hand turn. Craziness to me. But I mean, when you have a practice that's a volume practice like that, you're going to cast a pretty wide net. Do you get a lot of cases like that?
I do.
Yeah?
I do. We get calls all the time for all types of legal matters. So we do.
But you would
and the reason for that is when you're dealing with such a high volume clientele or client base, then naturally you're going to get phone calls from those people or people they know with all types of legal matters. So
you're the lawyer. You're a collection
That's right.
point for whatever. one thing I want to kind of get into is my exposure to municipal courts or justices of the peace. Typically, it's kind of like I was saying before. I've always wanted to. I haven't tried a speeding case. I've never pled. I've wanted to, because I think that's going to be ridiculously hard to get a not guilty on a speeding case.
It is. I think the cards are stacked against you.
The jury's there saying, just pay the damn thing. So
I think you have a couple things working against you. One, you have a judge that is appointed, not elected, and I think city council is looking at these courts and seeing how much revenue they're generating.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but I think that is a factor.
Well, I'll say it right now. They're collection agencies. I was joking. You don't have to say it because I know you have to show up there. If I'm ever in JP court or municipal court, it's one of two things. It's either a conduct-related offense that's going to have maybe immigration consequences, or somebody's driving a methamphetamine-filled truck through Allen, and Allen PD just, God love them, has to write them the ticket for the bad right-hand turn on top of the 5 to 99 for life, and so that's kind of when I'll be there, but. These days, and here's where I'm going, and here's kind of where I want, I think in many ways there's a lot of negative overtones, and I will say this to anybody listening, and you tell me what you think. I will never let a municipal court judge decide anything. I will always go to a jury if we're fighting something in municipal court.
I think that's the usual rule. With that being said,
I'm sure there's exceptions.
There's obviously exceptions. There's a lot of great municipal judges out there, but also there's a lot of judges that you feel like they've already made a determination of the outcome of the case without hearing any evidence whatsoever. So if you are a defendant on a municipal case on a speeding ticket, I think it is difficult. Not only is it difficult if you were to have a bench trial, but also if you opt to exercise your right and have a jury trial, you have jurors that are sitting there looking at you thinking, I cannot believe I'm not at work today, I'm not picking up my child from school, or I missed my lunch.
And all because you won't pay a traffic ticket.
And it's because, and they're thinking, I sped on the way to get here, so it's within the realm of possibility that you did too. So usually, now, with that being said, there are cases where, I mean, you have commercial, you have CDL holders, you have truck drivers that to where their occupation, their livelihood is depending on a clean driving record, and so those are cases that you would hope that a jury would take more serious.
So, what I've noticed now, is that with the pandemic, with COVID, with Zoom hearings and dockets, these places are becoming even more efficient collection agencies. And I'll tell you this. We have yet to talk about Baylor Law School. We've yet to talk about Tarrant County, and we've yet to talk about insurance companies. Those are the three big. Jeremy's gonna.
Did you go to Baylor Law School?
No, I didn't. I'm jealous. We have a very good friend who is not watching, who pledges never to watch, who we've mentioned before. He's a Baylor. No, I've had Baylor guests, and all the lawyers who I tend to hire for my own personal whatevers tend to be Baylor lawyers. They have this thing, practice court. Do you know a lot of Baylor lawyers?
No.
That's probably lucky. They do this thing called practice court, and it's kind of like they sort of think they're the Marines. That's another story. But I love Baylor lawyers with all my heart. I really do. Tarrant County, I rail on them. I've railed on them before. If you've watched my podcast, and nobody out there has, so I'm not worried about that. If you've watched that before, you know that Tarrant County bills itself as the world's greatest place to practice law and very friendly, and they're just kind of the same as everybody. And then insurance companies, and that goes without saying why they're vermin. But municipalities, I mean, I've observed that with there's a couple things with the online dockets. Number one is it's easier for you, surely.
Sure, it's convenient
because you don't have to schlep to Carrollton and then
correct
Farmers Branch, and
so if you do have a high volume of traffic tickets, it does become difficult to make you because you're dealing with multiple municipal courts and JP courts on a daily basis. whether it's 6 courts or 10 courts, it's every day. So obviously getting to each court becomes a juggling act. Zoom has made that very efficient and very easy. So that is one positive of, the Zoom hearings. But
there's also, I noticed on one there was like a button to click to just pay your ticket.
that's true. They all the courts now do have websites, where most of them have websites where they do facilitate getting your money.
How convenient for them.
Yes.
It's almost as if it's a big deal for them to get your money.
I think that is important. Unfortunately, municipalities have become accustomed to these courts being streams of revenue, and so I don't see that going away anytime soon.
There are a few municipal judges, back to something I said a little bit ago, and so JP Cathy and the Crew Nation kind of has some footing on here. You're watching JP Cathy and the Crew Network. You can watch JP Cathy and the Crew Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 7:30 and 9. This is the Lawyer Show. We're on at noon, between noon and 1 on Thursdays. I'm your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel is Bradley Anderson. And so, talking again about municipal courts and waiving, so and just to break this down for everybody, to kind of, sometimes we go a little fast, and and not everybody out there is a lawyer, so we do kind of have to be a little more Sesame Street than right, the McLaughlin group. So what happens is you have a right in any criminal case in Texas to a judge or a jury to decide guilt or innocence. In other states, you actually don't have that right on misdemeanor cases. You always have that right on felony cases. And so on a misdemeanor case, you have the right to say, I want to have the judge decide this case, or I want the jury. Now, the prosecutor can frustrate that. I don't want to lose focus here, and start talking about, what was I talking about earlier?
I don't know.
Where I went with doctors and med school. And so, but what happens is you've got some of the municipal courts. Again, I'll sit here and trash them so you don't have to. Okay.
Thank you.
Because I know this is where your bread is buttered. But they're their own little kingdoms.
True.
They are there all day, every day.
True.
They're very insular, and you cannot think that a municipal judge, again, as you pointed out, who is not elected, sits there and drinks coffee with the police all morning, is going to come out and then tell the police officer he's wrong about a speeding ticket, or anything else for that matter.
Correct.
It's just not going to happen.
Correct.
And so that's why you have to have, in my view, if you're really seriously contesting something in those venues, you have to have a jury that does it. And ironically, what happens, what I've found is, if I've tried, my gosh, probably, I don't know, a handful of municipal tickets over the time, assaults, simple assaults, public intoxication. I've tried a handful of those over the years, maybe petty theft under $100. And in those instances, when you do have a jury, the judge bends over backwards to be fair. In fact, so much so that I'm like, you're kind of not actually being fair to the prosecutor now. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I know we've kind of talked about that dynamic.
To where if it's a traffic matter, I feel like the jurors are looking at not only the defense counsel but also the defendant. Why am I here?
But you have zero chance with the judge, and you have 5% chance with the jury.
So it just depends. It depends on the court, and it depends on the judge.
Some judges are really good.
There are a lot of great, fair judges.
There are.
There are others that not so much.
There are colleagues of mine who've left a successful practice and gone and done this, and I have a lot of respect for them. So I don't want to sit here and say that all municipal judges are bad, but there are some who sit there and drink coffee with the cops all morning.
Sure.
And that's fine. It's just not fair.
Sure. You're right. It's not fair. So, I mean, obviously, and the thing is even though the range of punishment on a speeding case in Court A is the same as the range of punishment on a speeding case in Court B, the results you can get from court to court are completely, vary. So every municipal court handles these cases very differently as far as what the fine amounts are, how many times you can get tickets dismissed through deferred disposition. people that come. I mean, we have frequent flyers that get a lot of tickets, and you have courts that are more lenient as far as helping the people out, payment. So every court, the results vary, and obviously there's a lot of factors. It's the prosecutor, and the judge.
There's 8 million municipal courts.
There's about 8 million. So that's the one of the interesting things about starting a ticket practice years ago is I grew up in East Plano, and I knew that there was a city called Plano. I know there was a city called Allen and McKinney and Dallas and Richardson and Frisco, obviously, but beyond that, really didn't know what was out there. And to this day, 20 years later, I'm still learning about these little municipalities that exist in the DFW Metroplex. Dalworthington Gardens.
I was just thinking Dalworthington Gardens. I was just thinking that's like a municipality that's the size of a par 4 hole.
Correct.
In Arlington, right?
And I will go on the record saying that court is a special place. But so, I've known about Dalworthington Gardens for a while, but I'm still learning about places. And so that is interesting, just how many municipalities there are within the DFW Metroplex. And I think, did you say 8,000? Is that?
I said 8 million.
8 million? Yeah,
that's probably exaggerating.
It's probably closer to 8,000. But so.
And is that just in the Metroplex? No. Maybe statewide.
No. Okay. I was being sarcastic about that.
Okay.
But there's dozens and dozens and dozens of municipalities that I didn't know existed until we would get a phone call and say, "Hey, I've got a ticket in this place." I'm always like, get on Google real quick. Where is this?
There's a provision of the Code of Criminal Procedure that I go over with clients quite a bit that says you have the right to 10 days notice of a trial. And everybody thinks, well, that's just ridiculous. I'm charged with whatever, shooting somebody. Of course I've got 10 days notice at least.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you don't understand. In some towns in West Texas, and in municipal court and in places in Iraq and North Korea, they get you and you have to plead guilty to get out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
And that is highly illegal, but they still do it because nobody tells them, hey guys, you can't do it this way. This is the Iraqi way. This is not America. You don't plead guilty to get out of jail. But I have come into I have seen real consequences.
Sure.
If somebody has, because a Class C misdemeanor, which is $500 and below, that's going to be muni court. That's going to be county or justice of the peace. That's kind of what we've been talking about here. Can still trigger, in certain instances, immigration headaches.
Absolutely.
As you were saying, CDL for commercial driver's license, it can trigger those types of headaches.
Absolutely.
Kids going to college can lose scholarships in some instances. So there are some real consequences.
Or that
here.
person that was in Allen with the truck full of meth that got pulled
or
over
that
for
one.
running the stop sign. So that had some consequences.
Could be some consequences because and so in those instances. It's pretty interesting to me that places, and I'll look at, nothing ceases to amaze me from a muni court, because I'll look at somebody to bring in a piece of paper and say, well, here's what happened on this part of it. I just pled guilty and got out of jail. And I'm like, let me take a look at this, and surely, and they said, yeah, you're pleading by getting out of jail. You agree to plead guilty and you agree to pay us our money. And I'm like, that's why we have that 10 days notice. We've already talked a lot about different things. I want to talk about Veritas. I want to talk about why it is that you are a restaurateur.
Okay.
How did things go that way?
Well, so I believe it was the year 2008, and they were always kind of leaning that way. Brooks, who is my law partner and brother, we had always discussed opening up a bar or a restaurant. It was just have always been into food and drink, and to us, that's a fun subject matter, and we both probably spent more time.
You went to college in Paris?
I did a year in Paris.
Not Lamar County.
No, in Paris, France. So I did a year there. But so my grandmother's French, and so she's probably largely responsible for some of this. But we were always interested in food and drink, and so pretty early on in our law practice, we had the opportunity to get involved with a restaurant and a bar in Deep Ellum.
Was that the Thin Room?
It was the Puppet Lounge in Tarantino's.
Yes,
so,
yes. Okay,
we
I remember.
We had some sweat equity interest in those two establishments. And thereafter, we decided to pull the trigger and do our own, and that was Veritas Wine Room, which we opened in 2008. And there really was never a grand restaurant plan, just like there wasn't a plan to have the ticket practice. And but we opened Veritas and did that for a few years, and then thought we should. We initially did not want to do a restaurant because there's a lot more moving parts with the restaurant, and also it takes a lot more capital to get a restaurant open. But after having Veritas for a few years, we thought it was time to open up a restaurant. So that was Boulevardier. That was spot number 2, which we opened up in, I believe it was 2012.
And you guys get like written up on a regular basis by D Magazine, by the Guide.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate with local press and
let's not be modest.
And some national press. We've
national press. No,
so we had to throw that in there.
Well, you're not being modest anymore. Okay, we've got that solved.
But yeah, so anyway, so Boulevardier was number 2, and then a few years thereafter was Rapscallion. That's our modern southern restaurant on Lois Greenville. And then just a couple years ago, which seems like a lifetime ago with COVID, we opened Hillside Tavern, which is our neighborhood bar concept. So we have 4 spots.
God, okay. What all goes in? This is just going to be too general of a question. Does it start with knowing? Because I remember when you guys were doing the Puppet Lounge in Tarantino's, you guys had a relationship with some really good chefs, some restaurant folks. How does it start?
Boy, well, the Puppet Lounge and Tarantino's all started with one of our really good friends. His name is Fernando Garcia. Fernando was a good buddy of ours. And he knew that Brooks and I liked food and drink and talked about opening up a spot at some point. And so he's the one that made the introduction to Peter Tarantino, who owned a restaurant called Tarantino's in Exposition Park. And that was the darling of the food critics back in the day. It didn't live a very long life. It had some issues and it closed. But Peter was looking to open up spot number 2, and he needed some legal assistance and some help getting with fundraising, etc. And so that was how that started. As far as Veritas, how did that get started? Just us talking about getting our own spot, and one day there was a place on North Henderson Avenue in the Knox Henderson neighborhood. It used to be known as Jerry's Supermercado, but the neighborhood was going under some transition, and Jerry's Supermercado was cleaned out and broken up into some separate spaces, and Brooks and I don't know who it was, a buddy of ours opened up a place called Capitol Pub that was next door to that, and I think that's when the conversation started to open up Veritas Wine Room.
What type of stumbling blocks are there?
Oh my gosh!
What's the big one?
Every step was a hurdle.
What are the big ones? Because I mean,
the biggest hurdle was trying to have our friends and family believe that we were actually going to do it. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, great! A couple more lawyers thinking they know something about running a bar or a restaurant," and so we went to our friends to raise money to be our investors, and we had a lot of friends, a lot of lawyer friends that did write us checks and helped us with the process. But of course, they were thinking we'll never see that money again, and this is going to be fun. I think that was for entertainment that they actually. It was all small investors, but I think it was entertainment to watch us fail. So we thought we had an idea of. We thought we knew what we were doing at the time. Looking back, we had no clue. And I would say even all these years later that we've been doing this, we're still learning. COVID obviously presented a lot of hurdles. We felt pretty comfortable navigating those restaurant waters and felt like we got pretty good at navigating those restaurant waters. But we came around the bend and there was that big old rock named COVID. And so that threw us for a loop. But it's always a learning process. That's part of the fun.
How much better are you at this than Brooks?
Oh, much better.
Yeah?
Much better.
I mean,
but look, that's probably true with most subjects, right?
Well, I'm sure.
I hope he's not listening. Brooks is a lot larger than me and stronger, so.
Well, he's miles from here.
He's miles.
Well, you're going to see him again. He's avoided me since all I can do to the guy is set him up on another bad date, and I think the odds of that are long anyhow.
Billy Peterson's probably listening to this right now, and he's going to tell Brooks.
I don't think there's any chance that Justice Bill Peterson, Place 5 of the Dallas Court of Appeals, is listening to this. He is very firmly let me know that he's just got more.
He's thinking about one of the cases that's in his court.
He's got more intellectual things to do with his time. He knows it, and I know it.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just is going to lose IQ points by watching me do this, and us. And so anyway, but okay, so. Going back to it, I mean, you say that you didn't know the waters, or that you thought that you knew the waters pre-COVID, and before we get to COVID and how it's impacted your business, and you were telling me before that you had 4 restaurants, and that there was a plan for a 5th, but then COVID came, and so there's only 4, which I think is a miracle that you still have 4. I'm sure that you guys have been. Well, let's talk about COVID. How's it been with that?
Well, it's obviously it's been extremely difficult. It's been difficult for a lot of industries, but for the restaurant business in particular, I mean, we were forced to shut down for a while, and then when we were allowed to reopen, it was at a limited capacity. And restaurants, if you're lucky enough to have a busy restaurant, usually it's there's thin margins in the restaurant business. It's difficult to make a profit, but when you're operating at limited capacity, coupled with people's concerns about contracting COVID in your space, et cetera, and all the health officials are telling you restaurants, you need to avoid those. It obviously presented some difficulties, which we're still going through. And so there were certainly some moments where we were having those conversations about we need to get prepared to go out of business, get our ducks in a row to go out of business, as far as restructuring debt, et cetera. And so those are conversations that we had. I think now we're at a point where we're more hopeful, we're more optimistic, and our restaurants are starting to show signs of life here and there. And so I think we're going to get through it. But we were talking about number 5, and it didn't happen because of COVID. It did not happen for other reasons.
Brooks,
but Brooks messed it up. But
he's not here to defend himself.
That's true.
Which is why we need to lay it on.
See, he can come. He needs to be on your show, and then he'll have an opportunity to raise his voice or dispute some of the things we are saying.
Yeah, he's much bigger than me too. You're watching JP Cathy and the Crew Network. You can watch JP Cathy and the Crew Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 7:30 and 9. This is the Lawyer Show. We are on between 12 and 1. I am your lawyer, Jeremy Rosenthal. My co-counsel today is Bradley Anderson, and so we are talking about all the special things that lawyers can do that are not always related to law. How much law do you deal with Veritas and your other restaurants?
Well, I think everyone deals with the law every day, whether or not they are a lawyer. I mean, as far as contractors, every purveyor that we use, we have to sign personal guarantees. We have contracts, dealing with our landlord, dealing with the TABC, dealing with the various municipalities, code compliance, et cetera. So we deal with the law all the time, every day. The good thing about having a law degree is not always, but sometimes those people that we are speaking with or handling it, they think because we are lawyers, we know what we're talking about. But which is not always true.
You also have the ability, though. You also TABC, for example. I'm guessing that's a very regulatory intensive area.
Absolutely.
And those are very sophisticated agents, or what, I don't know what they call them, what they call themselves, or
so dealing with the TABC can be stressful. If there's there's rules that need to be followed, and obviously we do our best to follow those, but sometimes they'll come in and they'll want to do an audit to see whether or not you're paying your mixed beverage tax, et cetera. And there's so even if you think you're doing everything correctly, they might still try to find fault with what you're doing, and that can become stressful. Absolutely.
But that probably gives you an advantage, I would think, over some other business owners or people who serve alcohol, in that you at least know where to find the resource.
Absolutely. And yes, And so that's one of the great things about getting a law degree is it is a fantastic education. I mean, I thought so, and I think you would probably agree with me. Going to law school, you learned about all areas of law and how law, affects you every day and surrounds you and is, involved in everything you do.
Make it sound like the Force.
It is the Force.
It binds us.
It is the Force.
Okay.
It is the Force, but yeah, no, the law degree has been super beneficial with our restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Brooks does largely transactional work. Is that right?
He did. So he's still dabbling in a little bit of law, but probably less so than me. But he did asbestos litigation back in the day with Klein and Pollock many years ago, probably 20 years ago or so. And then when I got out of law school, I went out on my own from day one. That was kind of always my plan. Was I was just going to hang up, put my sign up and do my own thing. And then after doing that for a couple years and kind of getting the business up and running, that's when, at that point, Brooks said he was going to send in his notice, and we were going to join. We're form Anderson and Anderson LLP.
Do you get a lot of cross-pollination between the? Do you get a lot of cross-pollination between the restauranting and the practice?
So yes. We get there is some legal work that does come out of the restaurants. We something we haven't talked about is we have a real estate practice now, and so the restaurants have been great for client referrals for our real estate practice. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to get a little busier and do something else, so we started that.
You get a lot of do you get a lot of hey yous? Like, in other words, because you've invited me to your restaurant before,
and you didn't come
because well, I feel like that's why you invited me. I'm a homebody, right? I mean, to me,
So you thought I sent the invitation just to get the goodwill of sending the invitation, but knowing you're not going to show up.
That's
probably what I wanted.
That's how I would deal with it. I mean, again, to me, a fun time is in my sweatpants, watching a little basketball on television with snacking on something. I'm a homebody.
So this COVID life for the past 12 months has been perfect for you.
Little much of it. I did pick up a part-time third grade teaching job that I never thought I would have again. That I would never have to, not that I ever did it before, but I never thought I would have to do that when all the schools kind of shut down. And I never thought growing up that I would really ever need the capital of New Hampshire. And I forgot how hard the third grade was. I mean, I was like, oh man.
Yeah, we had to do the same thing.
How did you guys do it at home? What happened? What happened with you?
So we have three small kids, and I guess it was right around mid-March. I guess it was right after spring break. It was spring break, yeah. And then we got the notice.
Today is March 378th, by the way.
That's right. So we were on our spring break, and I think we were notified at some point during spring break that, oh, by the way, you're not. I think actually before spring break they were told to take their books home. Maybe the timing was like, we see what's happening, bring all your books home, and then it's like, all right, y'all aren't coming back to school. So it was tough because obviously my wife had to continue working and I had to continue working. I felt like we were better situated than a lot of parents because we were able to work from home, but it was tough having three kids running around and trying to keep them focused and no, you really do have to do this, and no, you can't.
What ages again?
So 13, 11, and 9.
13, 11,
8, 9, 8.
Go ask him when you get home.
Yeah.
What's your name again?
My daughter's 8 years old. She'll be 9 this summer.
Yeah, there you go. That's how they.
No, it was So I can't imagine the hardship that put on parents that had to go to an office and didn't have that weren't able to stay. But it was a little bit stressful. Probably, my kids. They would have been a little smarter if we weren't their teachers for a few months.
This is going to be, they'll be resilient. And I don't know. I think that, so I joke, my wife's family, I'm not allowed to talk about certain individuals.
Can you tell us who you're not allowed to talk about?
No, I can't. But I will say that how about, we'll do it this way. the Great Depression had a long-lasting impact on the people who survived it.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about people who would not throw away table scraps, people who were very independent, people who would fix things on their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, just very resourceful people, okay? And so that was in many ways a legacy, I think, from the Great Depression that is sort of unseen or it just shaped how many people behave. I don't know about you. If I'm in a crowded room, I think twice about it now.
Sure, absolutely.
And so I wonder if that is sort of the your children in 40 years. I wonder if they're going to have trepidation going to a Mavericks game when the Mavericks win their 12th championship in a row.
Sure.
In 2064.
They won last night.
The Mavs?
They did.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I just know that because my 13-year-old follows the Mavs. He's into the Mavs, so I always hear about the games the morning after.
Luka's all right. I've heard about him.
Yeah.
The Mavs get a 10-year pass, and the Lawyer Show, we're all about talking about sports, and sports analogies, by the way, are very good ways to explain the law, right? Instant replay is good for an appeal. This ref needs glasses is a good way to describe why the judge didn't read anything that we gave them. But yes, to your point, talking about sports, the Mavs have a 10-year pass.
Okay.
Maybe over because they won the championship.
True.
I said you guys get 10 years to do whatever.
True, and that's what they're doing right now.
They said, Jeremy,
they took you up on that.
They took me up on that.
I think they have a few years left, don't they? Or what about the Cowboys? Did you give them a 25-year pass?
No, they're on no. But I'm glad to see that we paid Dak as if he's Patrick Mahomes. Except he's not.
My brother, he's a diehard Cowboys fan, even when they're not doing well, which seems to be more often than not. But I love hearing at the beginning of every season him telling me why they're going to be a great team this year. So I'm waiting for that to happen.
Okay, the Cowboys are to me, it's Shakespeare. I think Jerry Jones is a character from Shakespeare because the greatness and the flaw and the failure are baked into the package. You can't have one without the other. He has made a billion-dollar football team, the evidence of which you go 400 yards that way and you go by the star, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've got all this ridiculous success and all this just great stuff because he's this micromanaging control freak that's flaky and all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so the Cowboys wouldn't be what they are today without Jerry Jones. But he's also the same guy who has to call Jason Garrett in the middle of the third quarter in a game and remind him that his backup's safety's ankle is feeling better, and you better get his ass in the game. I've done two things that JP, Kathy, and the crew would not like. I've said this is a family show and a family network, and so I'm sorry, but profanity is also big in lawyer world too.
It helps with ratings.
Well, I've there's a lot of this stuff that we pick up in law school, but I mean, anyway. But I think that the Cowboys are. Jerry Jones is a Shakespearean character because the failure is built in. It is built in. It is not if they will implode. It is when and how. But they're also great for the same reason. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely.
I feel like you're not taking this serious. I feel like I've given you this deep, literally analysis, and you're just I don't know.
I take all Dallas Cowboy talk very serious. I take everything you say very serious.
Mike Sherman, or not Mike Sherman? Who's our guy now? Mike Sherman is a former coach of the Packers. This is
I don't even know. We should call Brooks.
Mike McCarthy.
Brooks will know. Yes.
Yes. What do you think of him?
I don't have any thought. I just would like to see the Cowboys win some games.
Rangers?
Don't follow.
No.
Do you?
Not so much. Yes.
I enjoy going to a baseball game, but no, I don't follow.
Well, okay, one quick question, one quick follow-up here,
Yep.
too. To tie in sports to a little bit of restauranting.
Yes.
This is my Benny Hill theme song telling me that we're about done and they're going to yank us off here, so we got to make this quick.
Okay.
So alcohol and COVID protocol, that's sort of where I'm going here.
Okay.
I got to go to a World Series game this last year because
Yes.
they had it in Arlington, and I just noticed that everybody was good with the COVID protocols until they weren't.
Sure.
And that was largely due, I think, probably to alcohol and alcohol consumption and being
Sure.
made available. It was a very fun experience and a very safe experience, I thought, until I'm going to the bathroom on the way out, and you have the lines.
Sure.
And then I turn around, and then there's a Scotch-nosed Dodger fan 4 feet from me and had been, or 2 feet from me and had been for the entire time. You guys serve alcohol. You also do COVID protocol. Talk about that. Talk about how they mix or don't mix. Talk about the issues there.
Well, certainly alcohol makes it more difficult. So we're trying to follow. I shouldn't say we were trying to follow. We are following the CDC guidelines as far as trying to have social distance, etc. But you're right. With alcohol, people might do things that they otherwise would not do. So you might have somebody that. Like that Dodger fan you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
So might feel,
And I love the Dodgers. He just happened to be the guy breathing on me.
Sometimes alcohol gives you I don't know what the correct word is, but sometimes you make some bad decisions on alcohol. Don't we have a history of people making bad decisions on alcohol?
Well, that.
Have you ever made any bad decisions?
You are watching the
drinking?
Lawyer Show. This is we certainly in my practice we certainly count on it. We'll say that. Not on me making bad decisions due to alcohol, on it happening. This has been a history-making episode of The Lawyer Show. I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you for watching, and we will see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we?